On that note,
Let's pour you a new
the
drink
penis
and then we'll
is
get rid of
supposed to be. It's technically the clit. That just never grew. That just grew.
it. That it did grow, yes.
Yeah, it should have grown. If it didn't, I feel sorry for you.
I mean, for some people, it doesn't grow.
You ever see
That's an
Hangover
unfortunate
where
fact.
he's like, oh, it's a
How
shiitake mushroom,
unfortunate.
and it's like, tell that monkey to stop licking my penis.
That guy makes so much money, and he's an actual doctor.
Yeah, pediatrician.
Yeah.
I want to know who would let
I'm
him
so sorry
touch
for the
their
things that
kids.
take place here. It's just,
I'm not.
it's unfortunate.
You know what you're getting.
He's
at
got a
this point.
stand up. He's got a stand up on Netflix.
Yeah. Okay.
Clink.
Clank, clank,
Clink, clink, clink,
clink,
clink,
clink,
clink.
clinkety clank, clunk. Hello and welcome to Strange Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Brent The Jesterhead Metcalfe, along to my right,
I knew it. Handsome John.
and on my left.
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
And before we go any further, I just want to give a shout out to my brownies in the back. The Browns tried this year, ultimately came up short. However, I think it's time to move on with what we normally do here on the show. Of course, we have no time to talk about The Witcher or Watchmen Season 2 not happening because the creative director left. We don't have any time to talk about the Horizon Zero Dawn port to PC possibly happening. And we definitely don't have time to talk about all those PlayStation 5 event leaks that are happening, more than likely because we'll be covering it here, and I didn't feel like discussing this week.
Yep.
However, we do have time to talk about the one thing we do every week on this very show, every single time.
Well, I guess it's three things, technically, but
the important
shit.
We're going to start with the dispatcher himself because we're talking about politics. That's right. That's what we're starting with.
That's what you came here for, of course.
Our man, Joe. I mean, I don't think
No,
he's
no,
really
no,
any of our
he is not our man.
Yeah,
No.
okay.
Feely Joe.
No. So
Can I call you Joe?
this is a
Touch me.
wonderful long quote from an interview. Anyway, that came up. Let me get to my proper quote here so that I can actually get the word for word of it, so that
We told him he was
you
first.
guys are all.
Put that out there.
He
We
was
told
well
him
aware.
He was first.
We had all this planned, and here we are.
So Biden's always tried to like make himself known, I guess, in the political industry or political community, and the I guess in general, as somebody who's willing to work with tech and will sit down with the people of Silicon Valley and all that stuff, and has sat down with Mark Zuckerberg and CEOs of like EA and different video game companies, Activision, that kind of thing.
Interesting word choice.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So he's kind of gone into this weird thing of speaking with a reporter, Charlie Warzel.
Reportal.
He's a reporter.
Speaking with the New York Times reporter, Charlie Warzel, where he, and I quote, said, "And you may recall the criticism I got from meeting with the leaders in Silicon Valley when I was trying to work out an agreement dealing with them protecting intellectual property for artists in the United States of America. And at one point, one of the little creeps sitting around the table, who was a close to billionaire, who told me he was an artist because he was able to come up with games to teach you how to kill people." The Warzel says, like video games. Biden says, yeah, video games. And then one of these righteous people said to me that, quote, "We are the economic engine of America. We are the ones." And fortunately, I had done a little homework before I went, and I said, I find it fascinating as I added up the 7 outfits, everyone's there but Microsoft. I said, you have fewer people on your payroll than all the losses that General Motors just faced in the last quarter of employees. So don't lecture me about how you've created all this employment. The point is, there's an arrogance about it, an overwhelming arrogance that we are the ones. We can do what we want. We can do what we want to do. I disagree. I think he's completely taking out of context what this particular person is saying. It does not say who that was that had spoken up about that.
Which I think is probably on purpose.
Some of the investigative work that had been done, I guess, into this had identified that maybe it was the CEO of EA, which,
Well, granted, I mean, when you're talking to someone who's probably a little bit more pompous, I would believe that.
Well, I was going to say his tailing line there about the arrogance. I do believe
he said creep. He led off with creep,
which is we're going to get to that because I do want to point out the fact that I agree with his description of these people being arrogant, because that is a common description, not unique to Joe Biden and his observations of them. Like, I do think that's true. However, if you're going to try and criticize someone, you probably shouldn't like put your own slur on it. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, so based on the conversation they'd had, he's the investigations or the people around anyway who have done some digging seem to think that it was based around Biden's sit down in 2012 with a bunch of Silicon Valley leaders, but is referring to the EA CEO John Riccitiello. For some, what was the reasoning here? But like the idea was that, or whenever they're talking about it being a multimillionaire anyway, like he would have been the only one like near billionaire, that kind of thing that would have been in the room essentially. But it's kind of curious to me that he would refer to them in a recorded on the record conversation. Why he would refer to them as little creeps? If he's going to refer to them as little creeps and can constantly talk about them as being arrogant and whatnot,
or like calling the kettle black.
Why is he? Why is he trying to? Well, one, he shows definitely that he doesn't know anything about what this is.
Correct.
Like, he has to get led into what the phrase video games is. But
These things where they
where they just
but then it like so.
said the man pressing buttons.
To me, this comes back to the idea that Washington is extremely disconnected from what happens in Silicon Valley, and a lot of people who, I'll be honest, are from a different generation or are older, that didn't grow up in tech like this. Like everyone prior to essentially Gen X wouldn't understand a whole lot of this, and even then, like our Gen X, like most of us have Gen X parents, that kind of thing, who still don't understand a lot of it.
I'd be okay if you took everyone in Washington who was over 50 and just ousted them.
Yeah, I'd be with too.
All of them. Because that, or take a test. Like, you got to prove that you understand how this works.
Yep.
How do you put it in a USB? Again. And they have to do it right the first time.
What is a video game?
Yeah, there you go.
My problem is that he's already categorized, and when he says creeps, he's talking about those people in general. Like he looks down on that industry. He and probably doesn't take them seriously, and also is kind of putting us down at the same time for those who are like them. I mean,
or those who support the industry, who buy games and play games and that kind of thing, which, by the way, is the majority of people.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of them tend to run into the 40s and 50s as of right now. I mean that's because that was a large portion of them.
You have to include everyone that would be classified technically as a gamer. Also includes people who play phone games, which, by the way, is a giant portion of the population.
I mean, my mom's almost 60 years old and she's playing phone games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and his complete lack of understanding of how the industry works. Like, he is correct that they only employ a certain amount of people, but what happens with that software has to go is because that software has to be pressed to a disk. That means they're talking to manufacturers. Those consoles are being manufactured somewhere, and then they're going to sales clerks. Like, there's an entire chain of people here, just like when you sell a car.
Because he's talking about those specific companies, but he's not talking about the contractors and the other companies that get brought in, because there are dozens upon dozens of companies that get brought in for this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say his point was very much more of a muted position than what I expect Trump to say. And to be honest, I think Trump would have said worse and probably got away with it. But at the same time, we're looking at an election here where he's trying to prove that he is of the people, and he's sitting there taking a large group of people and saying, "You're a bunch of creeps."
Yeah.
And regardless if he's talking about the people who create them or the people, or he literally just knows that they're a bunch of weirdos. Like, they do some weird stuff in the background. We just don't know about it. But that's a little more worrisome.
But honestly, that comes back to the whole meme that came out of this, is that he's just another typical boomer.
Yeah.
He doesn't get how this works. He doesn't understand the industry. Okay, I'll agree with you that the gaming industry and that community definitely can be arrogant.
Well, I mean tech in general, not just gaming, but like when you talk about like the CEOs of Google, of Microsoft, of Facebook, like these people are arrogant.
Yeah.
Like that's how they got.
A lot of people call it arrogance.
To some extent, they have to be, because
at what point does confidence become into arrogance? So arrogance is usually a misfound understanding of your position and what you're capable of, and I don't think that's what's going on. I think his non-understanding of the situation is what makes him feel like they're being arrogant. In reality, it's just his insecurity of not knowing what he's talking about.
Well, but I mean, we don't know who's in that room, but if we take the CEO of EA, like,
I don't care if he's making millions of billions of dollars, he's not freaking arrogant.
He's still arrogant.
Well, he can be, but we don't know who that is in order to make.
Depending on who you talk to, every CEO could be arrogant.
No, I agree.
Elon Musk, who's one of the
arrogant.
I think we did a story where most of them are psychopaths.
He is arrogant. No, I think that comes with the territory, which is why it's an interesting word to use. Like, and again, I agree with his observation because I do, from my personal experience, see them as arrogant. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad quality. I think being arrogant in that position is what helps you get there and lead the charge. Looking at people like Zuckerberg.
What's the difference between that and confidence then?
The difference between arrogance and confidence would be the fact that you are so overconfident that nothing can topple you. Like you're skewed in your perspective of how the world works around you.
I don't feel like that industry feels that way. I think there might be a couple of people who
really?
definitely feel that way.
I feel like a majority of the people in power of this even games industry feel that way. Like listening to them talk about how Bobby Kotick,
when they're talking with towards us, they have to show a level of confidence because they're in charge of stocks and people want to see confidence.
I'm not talking
even
about
to the point of
though.
almost arrogance.
I'm talking about arrogance. I'm talking about Bobby Kotick saying I deserve every single penny I get and my bonus as the CEO because I've ran this company and nobody else could do what I do. That's a level of arrogance because I definitely know quite a few people who could run the company better than him, in my personal opinion. So
it's on perspective.
I mean, that's true for
to some
we
extent.
can't prove that.
There is a certain
Yes,
point where it almost
I'm
becomes
just pissing him off.
that's how it works. Like
there is a certain point where it becomes almost universal truth or universal understanding that this person's pretty arrogant.
Yeah.
Like,
and you see a lot of it in the people up top. I think that we as a games industry, we get a lot of people who have FaceTime who are not. Most of the people who are arrogant choose to stay out of the spotlight.
Yeah.
Because they don't want that on them.
Yeah.
like, could you tell me, like, is Rich Telly? I didn't even know that was the CEO of EA. I can't even repronounce his name because I don't know who he is.
Considering how some of the decisions that he and his the person he succeeded before with like how they treated the development of Anthem and other games.
Yeah.
Yes, 100% arrogant.
Yeah.
That's also why he's not ever around for EA Play. That's why he doesn't come out and put himself
Yeah.
up front. Like he manages the company from behind the scenes because he doesn't want to have to deal with that stuff.
They want to look humble.
Yeah. It's the same with the president of PlayStation, who at this point
Or
in time,
our
I can't
president.
remember. True. Well, he likes being up front. That's a problem.
On the note of the president, anyway, to shift
Yes.
this a little bit too, because this has kind of become a topic because Biden has also been one of the proponents against shooters and violence-based games because of the quote-unquote common knowledge that apparently that it is video games have a partial blame here whenever it comes to school shootings and massacres and all that stuff because it teaches kids how to do that kind of thing. Now
That's bullshit until they allow the CDC to do
Actual test.
testing with guns,
Yeah,
let alone video games.
He is not the only presidential candidate who believes this.
Yep.
And if him or any of the other, competitors anyway that are trying to go for this position succeed, they will be the third president in line who has gone under this belief.
Yep.
Because
Also,
Obama and
old
Trump both.
white men.
Possibly old white woman, but
Yes.
we'll find out.
But we'll find out, yeah. But
Well, if we're counting him.
Obama and Trump have both made claims that, investigations and things need to be done in the video game industry to knock down on violence and to prevent this as becoming an avenue for it. When there are plenty of studies from university research institutes that have debunked this and said, no, this is not a way to do this. Actually, for a lot of people, this is an avenue for venting.
Not to get too
Catharsis.
political, but this is also why we have people who are in power who are not smart enough, or I won't say smart enough, who aren't knowledgeable in the fact, and they rely too much on opinion of what they think the public wants and what their support staff is giving them.
Yeah.
So if you're getting all your news from Fox News, obviously you're going to get a biased set of point of views.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And on top of that, you even look at some of the stuff that they report out, you'll get headlines saying, oh my God, did you know that this and this causes this? And it's like, that was a headline on the inside of a paper that disproved that, but you didn't take the time to read it.
So the only problem there too, though, is that it's kind of become a unanimous vote with the media against video games as well, because it's an easy finger to point.
Yeah.
It's an easy finger to point. Oh, there's tons of violence in these video games, so it must be causing people to
Again,
think
the
violence is
CDC is
okay.
allowed
So I'm
to
going
do
to point
the
my finger
math.
at this because that's got to be the problem.
There's no point in having this discussion.
It's an easy finger to point, and there's no lobby protecting it.
Yeah.
No.
Is what it comes down to.
But the other thing too is that it's been said now for 12 plus years.
It's a stick
And-
that they could easily throw out, but no one's going to do anything about it, and no one's going to get mad enough to want them to keep doing something about
Right.
it.
I mean,
so it's
Trump's-
just a moot point that's said and move on.
Trump has said it either once or twice in his presidency. He's tweeted about it at least once or twice in his presidency, that kind of thing, to say video games are bad. We need to reevaluate this situation.
And we had companies come out and say, no, this is not the case. They've pointed a bunch of stuff out and said that you're being wrong.
But a lot of that gets muted because they don't want to hear the proper debunk of that. They don't want to hear the truth of that side, I guess, to some extent, of saying, oh, no, this can't be the non, clickbaity headline that this is.
It's going to be
kind of
super funny when I hear them say, I want to make these illegal. And it's like, that's going to go great for you in the polls.
Well,
because you'll put a ton of people out of business. You'll put a ton of people out of work. It's too big of an industry right now to be able to do anything, which is also part of where the air is.
I mean, if it was actually causing harm, then I would say that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a similar argument that was made literally when television came around. Like when we had Westerns on TV. That was an argument politicians were making. This is going to make children violent because it's showing them violence. It's the same thing.
If I recall,
70 years later.
If I recall, our violence rates haven't changed a tremendous amount. Or they've dipped, actually.
I would say, as a matter
Charlotte
of fact,
has had more murders. This has doubled their murder set from last year.
So up
Around
until
2018, 2019.
up until 2018, the violent rate on almost every scale has gone down, with the exception of domestic violence.
I'll say that media input may have changed for that. So
and gun violence. And recently, all violence is starting to go up again. Like we're seeing it's a small escalation compared to like what we've seen in the past. Late 80s, early 90s, awful for the United States.
It's pretty violent.
So we're doing pretty good comparatively, but it is
comparatively to when all of these Western shows started coming on.
But it's such a dog and pony show that you're right. It proves that he has no knowledge of this. This is a man who wants to be the leader of our country, and it also just showcases the issues we have in our system right now, where like we don't.
If you're gonna have an opinion on something, at least be knowledgeable about what it's freaking called, for Christ's sake.
Don't be two-faced about this too. If you want to be a leader of negotiating with Silicon Valley, and I want to be somebody who speaks with this community and really understands them and that kind of thing.
Let me demean them first.
One, actually understand it, and two, don't attack them personally. Don't attack them.
Yep.
It's common knowledge, quote unquote, that developers are nerds, and most of the time, your nerds are generally pretty weird.
We're cave dwelling creatures.
But by comparison to somebody else. Biden is weird to the rest of us.
Well, and
He's weird to most women.
To me, it just showcases you're supposed to go and travel
Don't
the world.
attack them.
He's already.
They're the ones saying it.
He's literally already done this. As the vice president, he traveled the world and talked to people, and it now makes me terrified to understand what he actually said to people.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if this is what makes you uncomfortable and your reactions to lash out,
at least
we already have that as president. We don't need another person.
Honestly, at least with Trump right now, whenever he lashes out about something like video games and all that stuff. Well, he lashes out about a lot of things. We can kind of write off most of it.
He lashes out so often. No, it's the boy who cried wolf.
We could lash out.
Having a child that's just a spaz. And you're like, oh, he's just a spaz.
But
he just hits people.
My concern here isn't just with Biden. My concern is with everyone else who is currently running for president that has no tech understanding, or the older presidential candidates anyway who don't have an understanding of this. I think Bernie is the only one who I think has any kind or tries to understand.
He doesn't necessarily have the knowledge base, but he actively puts himself.
Or if nothing else, he'll put his people up to educate him on some of this. Not that I'm trying to advocate for Bernie specifically, because there are other candidates also who are younger and understand this stuff.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang's a great example of that.
Oh,
He's
absolutely.
Buttigieg is another great example. He's a little bit younger, so he'll understand some of this stuff a little bit better. But
I think we're in the next, at least within the next two elections, I think you're going to see a very huge turnaround in both Congress, House, and hopefully the executive branch.
But the big thing is, and I guess
what are you doing over here?
Gang.
He's just doing some hand symbols over here.
To some extent, I will agree with you that a lot of the older heads that are currently in politics are what's holding us back to some extent for this, and probably need to go.
I mean, you see what AOC has done. She's totally. I mean, you have almost everyone who's of that same age bracket attacking her because she's upsetting the norm.
Yeah,
and they don't like that.
Whether you agree with her or not, at least she's actually doing something about it.
Oh, darn.
I agree with that. No, I mean, honestly,
that's how Trump got elected.
I believe some of this could be rectified is if we were to change how some of the offices work, where sure you're part of Congress, but you also have a delegated science person that is part of your staff. It's a requirement, and that individual needs to be like
Your
informed
point of contact
enough,
for all of it,
for general stuff.
They're
So-
called having advisors and committees that you talk to about certain subjects. It's about having the appropriate mindset
Yes.
behind your decision
Oh my
making.
gosh, you have
and
to
none
have
of
a
them
millennial
have
or a
that.
Gen Y behind you to
Hence
help
why,
you out there.
just lop them all. We'll pull the guillotine out. We'll put a red and Washington right in front of
Dude,
the Lincoln
100%.
Memorial.
I think if you
This is not
actively
a
go,
threat. It's just a suggestion.
well, I'll tell you what the
It's a
threat.
damn
The
promise.
freaking Iran put a $3
Damn is
million
not a
bounty
cuss word.
on Trump's head.
Yeah.
Anybody who kills Trump, I'm like,
Damn
my
is not a
God.
cuss word.
It's not. It's in the Bible.
Thank you.
Both those words
Jesus.
are in the Bible.
God. I was saying, damn.
I was just spread out enough.
Okay. For all of those who don't know, we have a little counter over here, and he keeps hitting it when I say, damn.
It's up to 5 now.
But I mean, yeah, it's frustrating. Again, you're advocating for being someone to cross whatever barrier there is, and then you're not. And not only that, you're showing your ignorance in an asinine way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once again, we have a man in office who does that already. We don't need another one.
Yeah,
We really don't.
we don't need somebody who flies off the handle and decides he's going to go for personal attacks on somebody.
Yeah.
To the extent of trying to do something professional and then claiming that he's still a professional person about it.
Yeah.
We don't need that. But it's something to think about, I guess. Is to look at
November's coming fast, folks.
tech and gaming.
Yep.
Like for our viewers anyway, tech and gaming is a big part of your lives. I would think
It's a part of everyone's lives. So
But-
you can't get away from it, regardless of your age.
Right.
The internet,
But-
where you are watching us.
Yep.
Right.
Very important to you.
But if you vote for a candidate who doesn't support, like movements towards tech or towards gaming, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, who like that is a big part of our society and our culture.
If you're not going to take the energy and the effort to actually be informed about decisions and things that you're going to say, like,
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, and not only that, like,
We're getting firsthand experience of this now for the last 4 years. So
Yeah.
let's please not have a repeat.
it's tiresome. But I mean, honestly, if you're thinking about us from a national perspective, like, whether you are a part of tech or not, whether you agree with tech or not, like, you have to be aware of the fact that we as a country need to progress in it in a way that is ethical, but
Yep.
also pushing us towards the edge. Because if we're not, we leave ourselves vulnerable, and that is just the truth of the matter.
And that's on a standing of, the increase in tech in regards to privacy
Yep.
or in regards to entertainment or convenience. I mean, all of it has an effect on us
Yep.
Correct.
throughout our lives. Gotta make important decisions with important stuff. And you can only do
And
that
have the
being
right-
informed.
Yeah, have the right knowledge to do
Yeah.
so.
We call those adult conversations.
Yep.
So,
Oh my gosh.
who would've thought?
Also is known as the important shit.
The important shit. Damn. Yeah. Let us know what you think about the old Biden scandal. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. The BS. In the comments floating above me like
Whoa.
an ephemeral typhoon that'll never end. Moving on to our next topic of the show. We're going to talk to Mr. Pettit here about Delayagedon.
Delayagedon. Seems like it happens more and more with more games every year. And even with the larger outlets, not just, first time
Yeah.
developers. I mean,
was
right
like-
now we got Cyberpunk just got set back to September 2020. Skull and Bones got pushed back again into March 2020. Doom Eternal got pushed into March 2020 from last year.
March? Skull and Bones is March?
That's what it says. Yeah.
2020 or 2021?
I thought it said 2020. I might have misread what that said.
Okay. That's fine.
Doom Eternal, March 2020.
Yep, that's-
Last of Us got pushed to May 2020. Gods and Monsters, Watch Dogs Legion, and Rainbow Six Quarantine delayed sometime March 2020, I guess.
No,
I'm sorry. We don't have a
by March 2021 is what they're saying.
March 2021. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Final Fantasy VII Remake pushed to March 2020. I know. Made that man cry.
Hey, plenty of time to play Iron Man VR, right?
Nope, because Iron Man got delayed till May.
Damn
2020.
it.
And then also Avengers got pushed into April 2020. And to top the little cute girl, Dying Light 2, which we were all looking forward
With
to
no
seeing
date.
coming. With no date. 20 something.
Yeah. No, Avengers was September, isn't it? From April to September?
It didn't say. It just
Yeah,
said
yeah.
April on the
I'm
thing.
pretty
so
sure
that's
from
why I took
April
it
to
as.
September.
It's probably going to get delayed again anyway.
But we're talking Ubisoft's got 3 to 4 games. We've got
Well, these are all AAA headers.
Square Enix has
Except for a
2
few.
games. Sony has a game. But here's the other thing too, is like we don't know Ghost of Tsushima, so is that affected by
No, they have one now. No?
No, they have a window. It's summer. But is that going to be affected by
No, because that was just summer.
Because Last of Us went from February
to September.
to May.
Oh, May. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So we're going to put that there because a lot of
Sounds
people were
September.
thinking that this would come out on early summer. So now you got to push it towards the tail end. But if you're releasing your
Honestly,
console
I
in
don't think
October,
Ghost of Tsushima is going to push too hard against Last of Us anyway. I think Last of Us is going to sell regardless. I don't think you're going to have a problem. And Ghost of Tsushima is going to come out after it.
I feel like you want your exclusive to have breathing room simply because Sony exclusives are bought by a majority of their console owners.
I would agree with that, but at the same time, like,
August, baby. Put it in August, please.
yeah,
So
I mean, I'm
good.
about to say
It'd
they're
be
going to have to
so
put it on
good.
the far end of summer, and they would be
Ooh,
fine.
I could feel it in
but
my veins.
you get too close to November, and you're going to start cutting it in with other things.
That's why August.
Yeah, and I said August is hot.
Yeah.
I like the idea. So my question really is, why are we having so many delays? And with this round of major delays, will they change how they talk about the release dates in the future?
I think you're already seeing that. I think a lot of, hell, Ghost of Tsushima is a fine answer to that, where it's like, hey, we got a window. We're not even going to set on a date right now.
Which I was like, we're moving in the right
Yeah.
direction. Keep going that way.
I think also part of this has definitely been caused by the fact that we have a new console coming out. So companies are trying to figure out what to do, right?
Yeah, they're trying to position
Yeah.
themselves where they're not too close to it, so
Yeah.
that way people are like, oh, I'll just wait. But with PS5 having the backwards compatibility, it shouldn't be really an issue.
I think it's less of a like, hey, we're afraid we're going to cannibalize our sales, and more of a what can we do with this? Like Watch Dogs Legion, I imagine, is something that could probably run on for an Xbox One.
Yeah.
But if you have that added power, how much further can you push that system they're building?
Hence the reason why I agree with their pushing.
Yeah.
I'm okay
I mean,
with that.
it's simple. You just throw it on a PC.
I mean, but why would you do that? Who
It
owns
costs
a
too much
PC
money.
anymore?
God. But the my biggest quirk with this whole thing is like the reason that they're coming out with these launch dates is they're trying to get their investors excited.
Yes.
And they're trying to get, they're doing stuff for other people that is going against their consumers.
Yeah.
Because right now we got all excited about spring. Spring's going to be huge. We're going to bam, 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 bam. Early, and then all of a sudden it's like delay. And it's like, oh my God, now it's empty. Like you've got a couple of things left.
But the alternative is they release those games that are not as good, which I would argue is way more anti-consumer than the delay.
to be honest,
I agree with that.
We've had this kind of conversation before too, where honestly, this has been brought to light a lot more, and we've talked about it quite extensively on here about crunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they can lighten the crunch up, I don't know what the situation is because nobody's really come out and say anything as far as I know.
There's been
I
a couple
have
of people.
something to add to
Yeah.
this, unfortunately.
But that's the thing. If crunch hasn't been too bad in the industry, that kind of thing, that the delays are helping to prevent some of that, then I'd say it's almost for the better. Plus, we've talked about too, if the game's not ready, don't release it. We'd
Yeah.
rather see
Yes.
the delay
We're-
because
Yes.
it's
You're going to have
the-
a 20 gig update
it's-
day one.
Because realistically, it's Brent sitting here with the immediate dams over and over again. Realistically,
Doing it to himself. I didn't do it.
but it's realistically us cursing at them one time as soon as we hear the announcement.
Yeah.
And then you go back to your life, like as opposed to the game getting released and then you talk about it for weeks and then the game just flops.
Agreed. I think this one specifically hit so hard because it wasn't just one or two. It was a almost
yeah.
That's not even a
legitimately.
full, that's close to a full list, but it's not even all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like quite a bit of the spring slot is gone.
No, a part of this is during development. They look at when they're starting, when they expect to finish, and they usually give out a date somewhere within 1 or 2 years out. But then you run into things. Testing isn't going well, or testers are saying that this is cumbersome and isn't fun, so they have to rework it.
Or,
so that
you've got
extends
bad
something else
developers
6
or
months
something.
off the bat just for one thing.
I mean, the story I always go back to is that like Neil Druckmann and a ton of people at Naughty Dog swear up and down that the original Last of Us was not fun and would not be ready for its May release originally, and they bumped it to June, and that 1 month they found the fun and fixed it all,
Yeah.
and that's how they got the game they did.
They just changed the mechanic well enough, I guess, that it
Yeah,
fixed
just-
it. I mean,
just tweaks.
Tweaking just enough. But the problem is unfortunately when it's unplanned like this, it creates more crunch.
Balance
So-
is very important in a game, and we always talk about it. Like
Yeah.
you get a feeling of balance within either it being shooting or puzzle mechanics,
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
or hints that you get. Everything adds up.
Can you insert the clip of Thanos like perfectly balanced right here? No, it's a weird scenario because as a consumer, it's frustrating, especially when it's not just one, but two or three. Like we tend to, as adults, plan our gaming way more.
Dude, you plan vacations around games
100%.
and it's like, look, I'm literally going to take a vacation here and here, so that way I can focus on these
100%.
games.
These two, just to correct, these
it's-
two plan their vacations around game releases.
Not alone.
But at the same time, you also want to. There are certain games that you have to be. That you want to be in with the crowd, I guess. So it's like you don't want to be behind hearing the spoilers. You wanted to be in it, not getting spoiled about and not having to worry about it. But you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, cool. He's just over here playing air guitar like a madman. But I didn't want you to continue. There goes that thought process. God, destroyed by some strings. The biggest part about all of this is like I understand that you don't exactly know when it's going to be ready. Like, but then do what Ghost of Tsushima is doing, saying summer release.
Yeah,
that's cool. Everybody's like, okay, so I know when it's kind of coming. The letdown's a lot less hard. Your investors know when it's going to be coming in. And you're good to go. Everybody's happy. It's a good middle ground. Being too specific. Till it's like, I mean, you're not going to know until probably 2 months out that it's going to be gold.
It's super weird, right? Like Ubisoft's a great example here, where they had 3 games in the final quarter of 2019's fiscal year, and now they're completely gone, which means their entire fiscal year is probably shot.
Yeah,
because their expectations for those 3 games, especially Watch Dogs Legion,
but now their investors are pissed.
Exactly. Like, so I don't. It's a weird conversation simply because I don't think they're happy. I can't imagine anybody else is like, yeah, we wanted to delay this.
Oh
game.
no, your quarters are bad.
Like-
But realistically, that does affect the company, though, especially if you're publicly traded.
Well,
Like,
Ubisoft had issues for years where they had Vivendi coming to try and gobble them
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
financial records for them are hugely
And the
important.
only reason they were able to fend them off was because they were succinct. They did what they said they were going to do, and they handed out amazing games that sold very well.
But it also cost them a lot in their personnel and like studio turnover. They had to close some studios, and so I think they're trying to find that counterbalance. But now they're kind of caught in between right now. And it's unfortunate.
And there's changing things too. So they're like, okay, we're not going to release an Assassin's Creed every year or two. Like we're going to take our time, and it's going to be done right. And so far,
it's happening.
A lot of these companies are doing what they're supposed to. But in a lot of sense, like when you're excited for something like Last of Us, and you're expecting something like that to come out, and then it gets delayed, it's just a huge hit to the heart. Like you're like, oh man, I was really looking forward to that. Not that it's not going to come, and time, as you know, whizzes by faster than anything else in this earth for some reason.
It turns out that according to my personal life, that delay was the best thing that could have happened to me because I'm trying to buy a house and change jobs and do all kinds of things.
But at the same time, like, you were happy that you still had Iron Man VR in the pocket, and that would have been so fun to have.
Or Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah, I know.
And now they're all delayed to be in the same window.
Same window again. So it's like you couldn't have even taken this time to say, all right, everybody, I know this is kind of like a fixed market now, but you go here, you go here, you go here, and we'll all be happy.
All I know is this is a giant ploy from Sony to get me to finally play Detroit.
Yeah,
that's my.
Well, guess. But you know what? This is an awesome. Take this opportunity as a consumer to get into your backup. Going to play games like Detroit that I started and haven't finished, or going back and finishing Devil May Cry.
Yep.
Well, really starting and finishing, to be fair. But or get into your Vita backlog. You know what I mean? Like just dust that bad boy off, and
dust off dead console.
It means life, so it's never dead.
It's not. Can't be.
I mean, if there's things that you do outside of gaming, and go enjoy that too.
It's eternal.
It's completely fine to take a break from a hobby, especially when you're waiting on stuff. Like
read a book.
Read a motherfucking book. I'm totally down with going to the backlog, and I will, but I'm also not nearly in the level. Like, these aren't the games I obviously want to play right this second. So, I'm taking my time. I'm going to play a little bit of this. I'm going to spend a little bit more time with the dogs or the wife. Go house hunting.
Yeah, because as you know now, we'd rather play games that have sex, and they're getting really angry with us.
I know. Tell me about it. So. Yeah. The device only lasts for so long. Then it runs out of batteries. I don't know what to do. So, I mean, it's a weird thing as a consumer.
They'll be happy there's haptic feedback now.
I think this is a children's show. I think it's interesting because it's hard to come down on either side. Like, right, of course I'm upset about the delays. Like, I wanted those games to come in. Plus, again, I planned my life around various aspects, including my hobby and what I'm passionate about. And I want this stuff to happen. But also, I don't want a bad game, so of course I want it delayed. I don't want them all delayed, but this is the life we live. So it's a weird space to be in.
It's the life we chose.
The hope is that this isn't always the situation. And I think that the next year or two is going to really be a measure of that.
Yeah.
So I would imagine right now, specifically, Sony, Ubisoft, and Square Enix are really rethinking about how they do it. Because Square Enix also delayed a small little remake of their Crystal Chronicles. They delayed the Tales of Mana. I don't know, another Trials of Mana.
Trials of Mana.
They delayed that. Like they've delayed like 5 games from this quarter, which again hurts fiscal budgets. Like they don't want to do these things. So I imagine that they're going to start planning this out a little bit better to ensure that they're making those sales.
Or stagger yourself, or you know, I mean, and we talked about crunch. There are some companies that they're saying they're feeling the crunch. I know you have more of a specific example, but at the same time, this is also a good opportunity to say, we don't want to introduce crunch, so we're going to push it out a little bit farther, so we're not killing our guys, but the product's going to get finished, and not to worry.
Well, and I think like Ubisoft's in a good spot, or even Square Enix, right, where we're talking about they need to stagger themselves a little bit. So unfortunately, there's going to be one team that will have to crunch. For Ubisoft, it's more than likely going to be the Watch Dogs team.
Yeah.
But let's let those other teams have a little bit of breathing room. Give them more time. Let's not set a date. Let's let that kind of go out to when it needs to be. And Square Enix,
Gods and Monsters, for instance, that's going to be a good game, but there's no rush for it. There's no need for it.
Let it
definitely
incubate.
take some resources and put it towards Watch Dogs Legion. Get it done right, and not have to kill everybody.
If possible, because the other thing too is they're separate studios.
Yeah,
it's not like
Montreal or
It'd just be like saying, hey, let's take some people from Sony London and put them in Santa Monica. It may not work out that way. But if you're a company that owns 7 studios, I'd rather you have one crunch to give everybody else a little bit of breathing room than have all 7 of them crunching. So there's wiggle room here. So
Exactly.
But hopefully we'll be playing something exciting soon.
Yeah, no, I will be. The remake of Vanquish.
You know what I'm playing this week? Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC. That's what I thought. Oh, I'm so excited. But let us know what you think about all the delays. Which one are you the most sad about? Do you think that Cyberpunk is going to make its release date? Spoiler alert, it won't.
Do you think Brent will actually play Detroit Beyond Human, or
Yeah.
I have played 4 segments. Will I play 10 segments? That's a question.
It's a good game.
Yeah, it's fun so far.
I'm having fun.
Yeah,
Still a question.
It's still a question. It's still a question. Moving on to our final topic of the show, we're going to talk about an interesting conversation here. So,
is it going to be?
I do believe. Have you seen the Star Wars?
So I read through your.
Okay.
I fell asleep 3 times reading that.
You spoiled it?
I'm almost mad, but I don't know. There's really no way to know is the problem.
Okay, so the history lesson. What we're going to talk about is the leak of the Colin Trevorrow Rise of Skywalker. I don't understand what happened.
Don't worry about it.
That's fine. Colin Trevorrow Rise of Skywalker script, which isn't Rise of Skywalker. It's actually
Duel of
Fate.
Fate. Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's the name of the song that plays when Darth Maul and Obi-Wan fight in the prequel.
Oh.
Yeah. Big fan for a lot of prequel fans.
Many well.
Big fan, many well.
The reason why we're going to talk about this is because, one, this script is apparently legit. Colin Trevorrow has not made a comment, but there's a lot of information here that lends people to believe that this is very much the case. We're out of champagne, so now we're just getting straight like this.
Came out specifically on r/Star Wars Leaks.
It did, and it is incredibly detailed, which also is one of the reasons why I want to talk through it. So this is going to involve talking about Rise of Skywalker, differences with the current film. So if you have not seen it, have any care for it, unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to just mute us. You can watch these beautiful visages.
It's a bad movie.
As we
anyway.
talk and scream back and forth to each other and all kinds of stuff.
It's a bad movie anyways. I'm with John.
Ray dies.
Ray definitely doesn't die. So the script is very interesting in the sense that it gets rid of a lot of what was in Rise of Skywalker. Ray is not a Palpatine. There is no a Palpatine in the sense that he is in this current iteration of the film. He's a Force ghost who's kind of around, but he's not really the final villain.
He's in the script, but he's not into any kind of presence like he has in this.
Luke has a much larger role where he is this
100%.
tutor, trying to raise Rey as a Force ghost, but also a haunt, like a specter on Kylo, which I thought was really cool.
A really cool dichotomy. Yeah.
Honestly, that was one of the things I was expecting from Rise of Skywalker. I was expecting to see him.
Yes.
You did, didn't you? See him pull the thing out as a ghost.
And he also just basically
with a creepy
says
ass smile.
He was wrong in the entire last film. Also, we get to see the fact that Kylo is the main villain of this film. Like he is indeed the person that Rey has to take down. He has taken the First Order and come back full force. Like they practically rule with an iron fist to the point where they're cutting off interplanetary communication.
Yep.
And so they have to, the Rey and the rebellions have to go and find a Jedi technology that allows them to communicate so they can start the rebellion, basically.
Yeah.
Like, way worse than we have seen since Palpatine's reign, which all of it, like, to me, has a beautiful symmetry of it, of, like, Palpatine's gone. He wanted Anakin to succeed him. Ironically enough, Anakin's grandchild succeeds him. Like, there's this nice little circular chemistry here. And again, we set Kylo up to be a villain very well in the last film. Like his decision to betray Snoke and then immediately become selfish with Rey. Like I don't want to fight you. I want you to join me so we can form something. We could be different than everyone else.
Right.
Her saying no, and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm doing it anyways." Like that's what makes that so compelling. And instead of the whiny baby that we get, who's like redeemed at the end of the film, kind of, who makes the lightsaber come out of nowhere.
It's mine and I want it.
But like actually has a compelling story arc. Like, it breaks my heart so much on this. We're gonna move a little forward because he does end up going to Mustafar, which he does in Rise of Skywalker, but nobody knows because it's like the beginning. But he actually goes and finds Vader's old palace. He actually gets to talk to the Sith leader of the Sith tutor or teacher for Palpatine, who's not Darth Plagueis, which is weird because in the prequels it's supposed to be Darth Plagueis, but doesn't matter.
No, the description of who it is or what type of creature it is, that's interesting to me, though.
Yeah, because it's very Lovecraftian, where
it's like this
Cthulhu almost
the way that I had looked it up anyway was because it's a ghoul or whatever. It's supposed to be like it almost looks werewolfish. It's like, It's odd.
It's very, very descriptive here. I'm going to see if I can find it in here. Should Luke kill the old space? Sorry, I love some of the writing in this. You can see the article. It's from the AV Club. They're the ones who have verified this. So again, it showed up on Reddit, but they're the ones who went through the process of reaching out to various people to make sure that this is indeed the case. But yeah, so apparently Tor Valum, who turns out to be 7,000 years old.
That is supposed to be the type of creature.
Okay.
Which to me is a little iffy, but I'd be interested to see the twist.
Yeah, agreed.
But I'll throw the image up on screen.
Ghoul described as Lovecraftian in appearance, a note that should make everyone shriek with grief at the loss of possibility of seeing something so fucking cool. Agreed. And so while Kylo's training with this leader, we have Rey training with Luke as a Force Ghost. And apparently Kylo's face gets damaged and he has to use smelted Mandalorian armor to repair it, which I was like,
because it
boss is that?
Yeah.
Because it's the metal that comes out of like the what do they call it? The Sith something or whatever that.
The Imperial, the money, right?
No, that was the thing that Palpatine comes out and speaks to him from the hologram.
There's a cool bit somewhere in there where the holocron wounds his face.
That's it, the holocron. That's it.
And then he repairs it with smelted Mandalorian armor, which is like so metal.
Which also would be a perfect clap into, like the Mandalorian of understanding sort of the backdrop of like the Mandalorians now, and that it would be done with Mandalorian, armor or metal, that kind of thing.
Well, and I think the core here is that rather than leaning into the black and whiteness of the Jedi and the Sith, both Kylo and Rey are working towards their own ends, using those ideologies, but shifting them, changing them. Like, Rey does believe that the Jedi are a force for good, but also that they have their own destruction off of themselves. Like, what Luke brings up in Episode 8 is like, literally at the height of their power, they allowed the Sith to take over the universe and destroy themselves. Like, that's what the Jedi did. And so Rey's taking that into account, whereas Kylo himself is going, like, I don't need to follow this ideology. I don't need an apprentice or anything along those lines. I'm going to forge my own path. So they're adapting and changing, which is a very human characteristic, which is also interesting and makes it feel less, stilted, I guess. Apparently there's a scene with Chewbacca flying an X-Wing, Resistance gang stealing a Star Destroyer. Apparently there's a droid that looks like Darth Maul, which is really cool.
Yep.
And
that would have been cool to see.
It's hard to say because Colin Trevorrow, he did the 2 Jurassic World films, which I enjoyed. They're not great, but they're fine. And then also right after that did The Book of Henry, which apparently Metacritic score is like in the trash. I actually looked it up after this. And so that's one of the reasons why Disney parted ways with him, is because he had a pretty big downfall here. However...
Oh, no. J.J. Abrams has had kind of a pretty big downfall from a film that everyone specifically didn't like.
Well, I think-
okay, I don't want to say didn't like.
Yeah, there's a
We have
there's,
some
Had a lot of
friends
pitfalls.
that are like, this is the greatest.
there's
I'm
an
like,
avid fan base that enjoys it. I think the biggest lamentation here, or the thing to lament, would be the fact that they had a good script that followed a cohesive storyline. So
Right.
it didn't feel disconnected. With this ending, more like circular feeling of episode 7, 8, and 9. It feels like they are kind of come together. Whereas
Yeah.
right now it feels very stilted. You can
Yeah.
tell 3 directors
Well-
directed these movies.
Well,
Yeah.
plus like the film that actually came out, I feel like catered to the fan base way too much.
I
Yeah.
don't know why they just didn't bring in Gary Whitta.
They should have. They should. I mean, he did Rogue One. Literally wrote Rogue One.
And Rogue One was amazing.
Agreed 100%.
Yep.
I think the saddest part about it all is that, like, on paper, this just sounds like such a better film. It sounds like it's more
On
like,
paper. I mean, no, it entirely comes down to the filmography
Agreed,
and the
agreed.
directing and everything that comes
I am
with
in
it.
no
there's
way.
a lot of parts to this that could go wrong.
Yeah, oh,
There's
yeah.
plenty that can go out of whack here. The Jar Jar can make a return out of nowhere.
But
Jar Jar should have been a Sith Lord.
that would have been incredible.
That'd have been
I would
awesome.
have. I would. That's leading into the Star Wars fan base. That's what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
instead of seeing Palpatine come out,
But I think the ultimate result they got with Rise of Skywalker is it's such a mess that it appeals to people who can see beyond the mess or care enough about it. But anybody who's just casually trying to enjoy a film can enjoy it. At least that's how I felt.
I'm not, full disclosure, I enjoy watching sci-fi films, including Star Wars. I'm okay with them. I'm not like this super duper Star Wars or Star Trek fan.
You're
Like,
not a
I
little
don't-
creep.
No, I'm not a creep. God. But at the same time, like, I can appreciate good art, good storyline, good movies. That was not one.
Yeah.
And there was a lot to it that should have been fixed and rewritten and really had some. I mean, did they show this to people that were fans that were like, what do you think?
Well, I've actually heard.
they're Disney, so of course not.
Yeah, I've heard this argument that a lot of people blame the second film in this trilogy for the shortcomings of this film, and I immediately I clap
No.
back only because chronologically these things were built in this order.
Don't-
So if
don't
you
give-
have this as a foundation, you have to work with it.
Well,
That's
not only
just-
that,
don't
but
get me-
like the way they filmed it, like it was just so piecemeal. As you, like you and Brianna were talking about, like it just was like, here we are. 5 seconds later, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Like-
and it's like it just feels so. It brings you out of it.
Don't get me wrong, the setup wasn't great, which does present a challenge
Yeah.
as far as the writing is concerned and trying to figure out how to smooth this out so that one you can still carry it into another. I don't want to call it a trilogy. I'd call it a series,
Yeah.
essentially, or whatever you want to call it. But
it's a trilogy of trilogies.
yeah, exactly. But the idea would be like it does present a challenge, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a bad film or it will be necessarily a bad film.
Yeah.
Like it just means that you have to get somebody who's good at writing something, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, if you want to lean into your fan base, leaning into your fan base to sort of look at a script ahead of time or getting a select few that you may have as part of a deep community might not be a bad choice.
Well, I look at a lot of. I think,
Although God forbid you crowdsource any of that stuff,
Yeah.
just from saying.
I think Disney's handling of Marvel is probably one of the most fascinating things, and honestly, the way they should have handled this, because Marvel movies are so big they have surpassed the Marvel audience as
Yeah.
a whole.
Yeah.
Like those are films that are meant to appease to them to a degree. We have shout outs. You get some plot lines that are distilled or
Or
changed
even
around.
some specific lines that people would
But
just recognize.
We have someone in this house who is incredibly upset with how they've handled Thor recently.
Right.
Thor Ragnarok's the best-selling Thor movie out there. Like
It was
how
fun,
do-
though.
Yeah,
Well-
and it's a good movie. Like, how do you handle these scenarios? Is that you don't necessarily you have to balance that fan
Yeah.
base and general audience, and I
Well-
think that's where they failed with
Yeah.
Rise of Skywalker.
So
How do you think historians feel? Okay, Ragnarok did not happen the way it was supposed to.
I think the hard part. I think Star Wars had a bigger task to jump.
Yeah.
I feel like the Star Wars fan base on the original 6 was still a lot bigger than the fan base for Marvel would have been by a good margin. I feel like comic book readers as opposed to Star Wars fans to me had always been sort of two very different sized.
You know
fan
it's
bases.
bad,
Wanna
but
know
also
if
the
we can
Star
get
Wars
these
fans in
metrics.
general, they seem to be a lot more critical than others. Don't get me wrong, like comic book fans are pretty critical, but when you're talking about like where they make, fan fiction, it's like just give the property to us, we'll fix it. And it's
Well-
like that kind of hubris is kind of just awful to hear, but it also
But-
tells you how bad you did.
I also
By the
think
same
about
token,
the doxing of
to balance some of that.
actresses in the show in the movie.
Well,
Yeah.
But to balance some of this, Stan Lee wasn't a part of the production and the writing and the editing of the Marvel films, which
Yeah.
did keep the original fan base engaged. Would have helped with some of that, and then the expansion from there. Like, okay, fine. They had one film in particular that somebody absolutely that a real comic book Marvel fan didn't like, particularly in this house.
'cause he's
I'm
wrong,
pulling from the
it's
sample,
fine.
but
like you said,
I would
that
say
Thor
that-
movie,
I
Dark
would say
Side of
that-
the Moon or whatever, was horrible.
It was awful. Yeah.
I would say that Star Wars this last trilogy has been a bigger flop as far as the original fan base is concerned than Marvel has ever had an issue of.
Well, I would agree with that, but I think the problem is that they tried too hard to cater to that original fan base.
Well, trying to
'Cause they-
compare them is totally different too, because you're talking about going from a comic book setting to a movie where you have
but
one that
there's
is just a storyline movie that was really big and ahead of its time,
Well-
being made into something cool.
I think there's a difference though between because I would argue that the Star Wars fan base is divided in the sense that like you have the hardcore who did dive into the expanded universe, who play the games, who do the TV shows, all that, and then you've got the parents who are now in their 40s who grew up and watched A New Hope in theaters. Like they're a fan as well. They just don't care on the same level.
Yeah.
So when A Force Awakens came out, it was the perfect balance for everyone.
was gonna say-
Hardcore Star Wars fans.
Because for me as a hardcore Star Wars fan, or as a Star Wars, well, I wouldn't necessarily call myself hardcore. I didn't see all the Clone Wars and all this, the other stuff. That came out.
you hardcore.
But like I had the original
Hardcore.
VHS set for 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And I believe I saw 2 and 3 in the theaters just because of my age, that kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
think I saw 1, but I did see 1 at a different time on DVD or something.
I
like
hated those movies.
But
Misa thinks you're wrong.
Oh my god.
but like it wasn't something
That would have been the
like, to
only
me,
redemption for them.
This has been a bigger flop. I think just from people I know, from people I've
Yeah.
talked to, that it feels like the fan base for Star Wars has been a lot larger, but has also had more of a tilt against this, that kind of thing.
Well, I also think that, in my humble opinion, Rise of Skywalker is the biggest bitch out I've ever seen of like
Yeah.
a creative property.
Yeah.
Whereas, like it or love it or hate it, whatever the case may be, The Last Jedi was trying to change up how the universe works, like the
Right.
world of Star Wars works, and rather than leading into it, which seems what this script was doing, which could have created a more interesting space for creatively after the fact, but also for this film. They just did this hard 180 and basically went down a checklist of like, what did they not like about this last film? We're gonna fix it in the 2-hour movie we have, not even a 3-hour film. Like, apparently there's a
Realistically,
JJ cut that has a much better coherence
if
to it.
if they had gone with a 3-hour cut and included some of the things that even people didn't like,
yeah,
honestly, I think it still would have been a better film.
better film than we have
So,
now. I agree.
I guess a note specifically. Who's the female character that
Rosie?
Rose.
Rose.
Yeah.
Rose.
Yeah, that had a massive part
Last Jedi.
in Last Jedi.
And she literally is asked in the middle of the
Yeah.
movie, "Do you want to come on this?" She's like, "No, I gotta stay here."
and then that's it.
And that's her storyline.
But
Great.
if you look at Trevorrow's
yeah,
script, she actually has a decent part.
she's along for the ride.
Yeah, like she's part of this, that kind of thing. She's not necessarily on her own trip with Finnegan, but she is part of this as another main character who's brought in
she's one of the gang.
to help carry that
Yeah,
into the next film.
Even the ancillary characters that were like following Ray, like I just didn't like them. I didn't feel like they were necessary, and I didn't feel like they added anything. If anything, their lines were just freaking awful.
Well, I think Poe and Finn are a great example, and Rise
I don't
of
know where we're
Skywalker
at. Follow me.
that don't have anything to do other than follow Rey and hope that it works. Like that is what they do in that across that entire.
That's what
film.
this freaking movie should have been called. I hope this works.
I hope this works. Whereas, there apparently is a much different storyline. Again, I find this conversation fascinating because for once we actually have on paper, like, here's the alternate take that could have been, so we get to discuss it.
Literally, you could have put Barney fucks Big Bird, and they'd been like, you know what? This is going to be an awesome Star Wars movie compared to what we just saw. Let's do this.
It makes me sad for JJ because apparently there's a better cut that he has put together that will not make it out for one
Great,
reason or another.
I can't wait for like the Blu-ray edition to
I
finally
hope-
come out and the director's cut come out and
I
it's like
hope,
4
man.
hours or something absurd and we'll have to watch it.
That's fine with me because my argument has always been, and I told John this before he actually watched it, is like, this isn't a bad Star Wars movie. It's just a bad movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he
Let
said that,
alone
I
a
was
bad
like,
Star Wars
oh,
movie.
really? And I almost convinced Mikey not to go see it. And then we went and saw it.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
It's another like
Palpatine's been in the background this entire time. Like, he wouldn't die because Anakin threw him down. Shut up. He's dead. You caught my fucking.
It could have at least they could
sounds
have
so
at
much
least
more
made
wrong
him
than it
look
should.
like GLaDOS more. I think he could have looked more like GLaDOS.
I was kind of hoping the arm would swing more.
No, I'll agree with you. I think in general this was a bad film. They should have gone, in my opinion, Endgame style. This should have been a 3-hour film.
Yep.
By a long shot. They would have had plenty of time to bring all of the storylines apart and then bring them back together if needed
They
to.
didn't even have enough time to do that now with what they
could have
did
had-
because they made
they
it
could
so
have-
piecemeal.
They could have had a separate storyline for Rose and
All
then brought
that,
her
yeah.
out and brought her back in, and then everything would have been fine.
So that's always been my argument with this movie. Is like I think the storyline is dumb in its presentation currently. But you can fix this story.
I don't want to hear a single executive from Disney ever say, "Oh, well, we cut it down because it was going to be too long of a
Yeah.
film." No, you just released Endgame.
Shut up.
Not only that, but it's like, who here said I want a shorter movie? Not one freaking person gave a shit.
You can-
about
I'll pay
your
$25
movie length.
if it means I'm going to go see a 3-hour film or 4-hour film.
Yeah.
that really does the storyline some
I would have
good.
been okay with an intermission. Give me 4 hours. Give me an intermission. I'd be okay with that.
Actually, here's the other side of this.
Make a day out of it.
You really want to make more money off this?
Two-parter.
Yeah.
No, not even two-parter. Episode
No,
9,
okay.
episode 10. It doesn't have to be a trilogy.
Yeah. Oh,
No.
I have said that for a long time too.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be a trilogy.
They were going to break that.
But it's only
would have been
Kismet
put on
if
a
it's a
cross.
good movie.
Again, I would have been okay if they would have an intermission, not a two-parter.
Harry Potter learned its lesson.
I know.
Yeah, well, that made me mad about Harry Potter because it wasn't even necessary.
No, Harry Potter was necessary. Hunger Games was not.
Yeah, that's
Neither-
I will give you that.
Yeah.
Neither was the Twilight final film. I don't know if it was called. At me, I don't give a shit. Anyways, let us know
That
what
was
you
a
think.
two-parter?
Yeah.
The
Breaking
books
Dawn.
take like an hour to read.
Breaking Dawn, that's what it was. Let us know what you believe or think about the Trevorrow script. Are you an ardent Star Wars fan? Do you believe we are absolutely wrong? Hit us up in the comments. I'd love to talk to you.
Did she
I
bang
probably-
both the vampire and the werewolf?
No, the werewolf loves her baby, which is weird in and of itself. We don't need
Great.
to talk about that here.
Awesome story.
We'll get to that later.
But I do believe now it's time for Last Call.
Last call!
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That was terrible. We did it again.
That's a single ding.
There we go. I feel better about life. Woo! Of course, we have a couple of shout-outs. You have seen us drinking our special guest here on the show tonight. This is called the Old Cuban. So the Old Cuban is a little bit of rum. You do about 1.5 ounces of rum, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. You only had lemon juice, by the way, not lime juice, but that's why it's a little more tart.
Well, I was the one that said he had it, so.
An ounce of simple syrup and 6 leaves of mint. You muddle that mint, put in the lime juice and the simple syrup, your rum, some ice, 2 shakes of the bitters. Shake it all up.
A little bit of
pour it-
PCP.
Pour it in a glass, and then you're gonna just pour a little
Ready
bit of
to go.
champagne right on top. It's
Call those dippers.
surprisingly delicious.
Yeah.
It is meant to be made with dark rum. We use light rum, but either
Yeah.
one, I think you're gonna be just
Yeah,
fine.
I think it's fine. I
Yeah.
like the. I actually kind of like
The
tart
light rum
flavor, too,
actually,
though.
I think works better with the acidity.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I would be curious to try it with a darker spice to
I
it.
feel like the name of this drink is a little racist.
Could be. I'm sure we've said racist
Well,
things on this
yeah,
show,
but it's-
this very episode.
Well,
believe
it's
it or
like
not.
I was thinking about it.
It's up to you to figure out where they're at.
Yeah, when we were talking about the Irish car bomb when we were in Ireland.
Oh, in Ireland, yeah.
And
They're
I
like,
was
don't
like,
ask for that.
Man, what are the names of these drinks and why do they keep doing that? Like, that's awful.
If you don't know what an Irish car bomb is, you should look up IRA.
Yep.
Anyways, moving on. We have, of course, the brand new channel that is soon to not be brand new anymore. The Strange Garage. One of the people at this table is on that channel. We'll let you guess.
Episode 4 of YZ125 build just dropped. Well, yesterday as of recording, but
Yep.
Monday. You guys will see this Friday, but Monday it dropped. So
And I'm sure there'll be another
and
episode after
as
that.
of the next Monday.
There you go.
Episode 5 will drop.
That's called promotion.
Woo!
Of course, we also have a weekly reading, which I did not set up this week, but I do have an article to talk about Video Game Crunch from Jason Schreier, Kotaku, discussing the fact that when you, there you go, when you
Full circle,
do
yeah.
delay a game, it actually does create more crunch depending on how long that delay is. Of course, we also do have the deal of the week, which is still the Sweet Farm deal from Humble Bundle. So again, $10 gets you Stardew Valley plus 9 other games. It is well worth your time. This is exclusive to PC, so keep that in mind while you're looking at it, but also goes to a good charity involving food
I'm sorry,
farm.
say that one more time. What's it exclusive to?
I don't know. And then, of course, we have our Discord, which you are free to join. There's a link in the description floating above me like an angry typhoon because I'm a madman. I'm a madman. And now we have our question of the week, which I went back and forth on. Normally, I'm like,
That's sick because I saw you typing one out and I was like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, I went with that one.
What was the weirdest thing you pooped out?
Correct. Mostly because...
No, you don't get to pick question of the week after last week. No.
What's wrong with last week's question?
There's no way you forgot.
It's all black
That was
hole.
a great question.
The canvas.
It's a black hole if he wanted to forget.
If you could bring to life, I'm actually going to edit this question while we're on the air. That's called live. It's if you could bring any mythological
we'll do it live.
creature. We'll do it live. Any mythological
The minutes
creature
are-
to life. What would it be and why? Can you explain why, John? I love that he's dying.
So I can see him and Mark do their thing.
No! What is wrong with you?
Red rocket,
And
baby.
then I'll cut
Red
off the
rocket.
horn of the guitar.
Red rocket, yellow rocket.
Honestly, if I was to choose a mythological creature, I think it would be cool to... Actually, I think it would be cool to see Medusa.
Okay.
I kind of...
I don't know if you understand how she works.
You'll see her like that. That's about it.
fine. It's really more like I just like how exactly what she was talked about to what she would actually be. Like if you were to imagine her from what they said to what she actually was, I think it would be really interesting to see her beauty, but then at the same time she's got snakes out
For
of
a
her head. I
brief
think it'd
second,
be really cool.
yes.
And you know what? I hope I get you're gonna really love this. I hope that I
no.
get turned into stone
You get stoned?
with an
To death.
erection. So that way everybody can
I can see it. I can see it now. He's turning away and he's just doing this. he's just trying to masturbate. And he turns around and looks, and that's it. That's where he's frozen.
I do like to think that when you walk into Medusa's statue garden, it's just a bunch of dudes with boners. And women with erect nipples. We don't
Goodbye.
differentiate.
Arch of King Squirrel, THC.
Theater
Do
Hurricane
you
College.
have an answer, Mark, so we can end the fucking episode? I think we're about 20 deep right now.
Yeah, you are.
If you need
I don't know. My brain keeps going back to dragons. I like dragons.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it sounds like the cop out kind of answer to some extent, but
At the
ability
same
to
time, that would be really
fly,
cool.
The protection, the having the thing crawling over top of the house. Don't get me wrong, that would be kind of terrible. Dylan would hate me, but
You could write it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Think of all the money he'd save in an alarm system that you'd have to put into food for the dragons and any neighbors.
That'd be awesome.
But no, I think that'd be dope to have that kind of thing. Medusa's such a weird answer. My brain keeps going back to like
No, I'm right there with you. I think dragons are really dope. They're high on my list. Not necessarily a mythological creature, but more of a crypto creature.
You gave the freaking question. Use a mythological creature.
Cryptozoological creature. I'm fascinated with Loch Ness. I would love for Nessie to be real.
oh yeah, okay.
I think
there
that
you
would
go.
be incredible.
He's always been a fan of Nessie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh come on, Bigfoot then. Now, let's go.
No, I want Nessie to be real more than Bigfoot. And I kind of hope that's like a vicious, mean creature that we've like, like it's hidden away or it's hibernating or something, and all of a sudden we awaken. It's like I'm gonna fucking kill everybody in this village. You're like, whoa, what happened to Nessie?
Wow, that
Like
went
straight
so
ape
fast.
out.
And then my actual final answer, I think, would be phoenixes. I think phoenixes are a
that would be
fascinating
cool.
creature.
Oh yeah, okay.
Great imagery and this idea.
Rise from the ashes.
Yeah, rising of the ashes and being this giant bird because they originate from Middle Eastern mythology, which I didn't realize. And from there, they're gigantic. Like they're massive birds with like 30, 40 feet.
Seeing the image
Oh,
I've got.
wow.
Is, the first image I had was from Harry Potter.
Harry Potter
where-
with Fox, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're supposed to be gigantic birds. Like they have a counterpart called the Rock, ROK, which are also gigantic, massive birds. And so this idea of this thing catching a fire like on top of a mountain, almost looking like a volcano exploding, and then a little chick coming out underneath, be really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Let us know what mythological creature you are interested in bringing into this world to destroy everything that we have.
Or to
Remember, you cannot cut the
masturbate to.
horn
Or
off
to
of a
masturbate
minotaur.
to. And you can never cut the horn off a minotaur. So until next time,
Cheers.
end our
Cheers.
life. Cheers.